Hi everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley. Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to start taking a look at Meghan Markle's series, and it's rough. We all already know that it's been panned by critics. It has horrible reviews. We're going to dive in deeper to some of those reactions and the response to the series in an upcoming video, as well as the PR mistakes that she made, some of the peak cringe, how this is impacting her public view at this time. But I thought for the series recaps, I would maybe do something a little bit different. I have always been really drawn to the domestic arts, even as a child. I would clean my family's entire house, do the laundry, cooking and cleaning, all of those sorts of things. I've always been very into that. It's as if throughout childhood I was practicing to become a mom and run a house and be a wifey. Like that was my goals. And so I'm very interested in these sorts of things in terms of what I like to do, and what I prefer to spend my time doing is these types of things, cooking and organizing, making a nice and pleasant home. So I thought it would be interesting to look at her series from that perspective of a homemaker, of a mom, of a home cook. I cook the majority of my family's meals from scratch, and so I thought it would be interesting to look at her series from that perspective. Because when we think about Meghan Markle's Netflix show, it's challenging to know exactly what her audience was. Obviously, it seems like her audience was in large part other wealthy people, specifically in Montecito. It seemed a little bit like a vanity project for her and her friends, or to show off to her friends. Alternatively, perhaps she was trying to appeal to other people who are interested in those things, because the subject matter does revolve around domestic arts. And so it would only make sense that she is at least trying to make an effort to appeal to that group, that crowd of people who are also interested in domestic arts for whatever reason, whether it is for hostessing or cooking or just people who enjoy generally homemaking sort of content where it's kind of peaceful and calm, is pleasant viewing for some people. And so since logically she had to have been trying to target that audience group, and I would belong to it, let's see if she can deliver anything interesting or valuable for her target audience. So our episode by episode recaps are going to be trickling out. I don't have a ton of time to sit down and binge this series. It's just not going to happen. So these will be trickling out nice and slow, but we'll be mixing in some reactions on the PR side of things and whatnot throughout the week as well. So be sure you subscribe so you do not miss anything. So episode 1 begins with her making some bath salts and bath bags. She says bath tea bags. That's fine, I suppose. Nothing too complicated, nothing very innovative here. But what really got me is that she mixes the first portion in a bowl. She mixes together Epsom salt, pink Himalayan salt, and some oils together with a wooden spoon till they're thoroughly mixed the way you would expect to see them. And then she's trying to fill this giant jar, and realizing that she's made far too little, instead of making a second batch in the bowl and mixing it to the same degree of quality as she did previously, instead, she just pours in a huge pile of Epsom salt and pours in a huge pile of pink salt and just kind of scatters it rather than really stir it in. And I don't think she added any oil to the rest of it. So it was very half-assed. Why are you doing that? You're on TV. You're being filmed. This is a once-in-a-lifetime shot to try to make this your thing, and you cut corners. Super odd choice. Super strange. It looked tacky and it looked amateur, much like the rest of the show. She's also hyping up her efforts a lot throughout the very first episode, straight out of the gate. It's very much placed within this context of, this is what I do to show I care. It's about how I'm feeling and what I want to do for people. And it's nice to want to do things for people, but it's most helpful, and of course, from the perspective of, not sounding like a narcissistic egomaniac, to think about it and formulate it within the context of how they're going to experience. Like, I hope they feel comfortable. I really want them to feel welcome. This is something that I hope feels comforting and relaxing or inviting, things like that. From the verbiage of speaking about the guests themselves rather than speaking about yourself constantly. She does this a lot. She also does this with every single thing that she makes and does on the show is, look what I made and look what I'm doing and look what we're doing. It's never about anything outward or even the things they're making themselves. At one point, her guest on episode 1, Daniel, tastes some jam, and instead of asking him whether he likes it or not or what he thinks, she just says, it's good. She tells him that it's good before he has a chance to answer or be asked whether he likes it or not. But the next thing that she does is she's preparing some snacks for Daniel because she wants to have a tray in his room that has the Epsom salts and the snacks. That's what she thinks is required, and some flowers. And so she pops some popcorn in the microwave, sprinkles it with a little salt, and then bags it. And then she takes out a bag of peanut butter pretzels and rebags it into a new plastic bag. And what I found was most peculiar wasn't necessarily the rebagging of the snacks, but the fact that she says, as she goes to reach for the pretzels, she says, since we put all our effort into making those, and points at the popcorn, we're going to just use these bagged pretzels. It's not naughty. As if popping popcorn takes any effort whatsoever. If that's effort to her, then I do not have any hope for this series because popping popcorn is the easiest thing you could do in the world besides opening a bag of pretzels. Honestly though, as a hostess myself, I actually prefer to leave things in their original packaging. She labels them in case somebody has allergies that this is peanut butter pretzels and this is truffle popcorn, but it's not just peanut butter that somebody might be looking out for or allergic to. There's other things as well, but also some people like myself like to see the nutritional content. Is there protein in this? What is in this? And so leaving it in its packaging allows the person to see the ingredients and the nutritional content for themselves. People might be avoiding certain ingredients as well, or they might be gluten sensitive. There's all sorts of different things, especially these days. So I just find transferring it into another plastic bag not only is kind of wasteful for the eco-warrior of Meghan to be just wasting more plastic. Maybe she should have used a jar instead. That not only would have looked nicer and been more aesthetically pleasing, kept the snacks fresher, but also wouldn't be wasting plastic. But whatever. Still, transferring it away takes away the ingredients and the nutritional content that some people might be interested in seeing. But another layer to it is if you have a snack that you like and you're leaving it for your guests, leaving it in the packaging gives them the opportunity to be turned on to a new snack that they like, and maybe they can go and buy it for themselves. So I feel like it's not always the way to go to transfer things. Even as a guest, I would prefer to not have snacks or food handled unnecessarily. You know what I mean? Like, don't open the package and put it into a new package for no reason. You're handling the food. There's, cleanliness and contamination concerns. If I see something in some dodgy, just clear plastic bag like this, it's not as appealing or inviting, in my opinion. I would rather open the package myself. Granted, treats and snacks is a lovely thing to leave in the room for your guests because sometimes when you're in somebody else's house and you're hungry before a dinner or something, you don't want to ask for a snack and seem rude or like you're impatient for the meal or something. So it's nice and a great idea to leave snacks, but not necessarily this way. This is much more likely to go stale, look like maybe it's been handled a lot, not the cleanest of options. It's not even that appealing the way they're just tied in these plastic bags where they're going to get a lot of air circulation as compared to the original packaging. So there's quality control issues as well. I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but I'm a little picky about food, I guess. Daniel, the guest, is her makeup artist who she has known, as she says, before, during, and after, alluding to her time with the royals, but she could have just said since, 2005 or something. She could have just said that. But he arrives and she has prepared a crudité, just a board of chopped veggies and dips. And he says, how long did this take you? And she says, well, it's just chopping vegetables. It isn't perfect. And he says, well, it looks pretty perfect. And this is exactly what the series is. Her just declaring, oh, well, he must think it looks perfect, so I'm going to say it's not perfect so that he can say it is perfect. That's what a lot of this series is. Now, it's okay to hype each other up, but does it belong on TV? I think not. It's not interesting. It's not fun conversation. There's really no substance here. Which brings me to my next point, that there really isn't any substance to their conversation. At no point are they talking about anything really meaningful or interesting. There's no subject matter brought up that's like a cool conversation. And the director of this series is the guy who directed Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown, which was a wonderful show. It was phenomenal. And so a lot of the visuals, cinematography of this series is only beautiful because of him. He is very talented. This must have been an incredible challenge for him, though, because Anthony would keep pace with his guests in the most entertaining and genuine of ways. They were enjoying their food. They were, sometimes getting messy, sometimes going on, random adventures and quests to get special ingredients and whatnot. And it was all very almost romantic to the area and the food, because you could tell how much they appreciated it and how comfortable it was. And his interactions with the chefs and the guests on the show were always so stimulating to watch, because they were talking about the dish that itself and the ingredients itself. They were talking about their experiences. They had shared experiences as chefs, so they had a lot of common ground to work with. They were talking about all kinds of things. The area, the local cuisine was all up for talking about, all relevant to the show. And so it was never dull, it was never boring, and it was always fabulous. And on top of it, Anthony was an incredibly talented writer, so he had a way with words. And because of the format of the show, Anthony was able to have footage roll and just do a voiceover explaining some of the stuff to sort of move the episode along at a nice pace, which really helped as well. Since Meghan's show doesn't have those same things, like any of those same things, I would imagine this was rather challenging for him to try to make this appealing in some way. I think he did a good job with the cinematography for sure. That was definitely the best part of it. But let's get back to some more nonsense from the Meg. This is how she cuts garlic? I can't even. And this is how she cuts chard. I can't even. These are two things that I use and make all of the time. And cutting it this way, I was afraid she was about to chop her little fingers off, because this was dangerous and hazardous, which shows the sort of amateur vibes, which, as a lot of people have pointed out, it's okay to not be an expert and to have a show where you're learning and trying new things. But it's not fun or pleasant to watch somebody who doesn't have like any degree of skill in the kitchen at all, because it's just kind of clumsy, I guess is the best word, and that's just not a very appealing thing to have to watch. On the contrary, it can actually get quite annoying to watch somebody sort of clumsily moving their way around the kitchen when they're trying to show somebody how to do something, because she's trying to like show Daniel some stuff and teach him some stuff, and it's just like, do you have your shit together? Because it doesn't look like it. When they start talking about the TIG at some point, she immediately turns the conversation into, oh, well, it was in the spirit of sharing things that I love. And that represents the whole show. She takes everything that the guest brings up and turns it back onto herself. Very predictable. We know this about Meghan, that she has a tendency to do this. And Daniel was saying that he goes, we had the TIG. So he was apparently really involved in it. He was the beauty editor, apparently. And Meghan doesn't give him any slack or leeway or opportunity to discuss this further or explain his experience more or what he's done since or anything. She just pivots it back to herself, and that kills the conversation. Because then the other person gets that cue that, oh, you wanted to not talk about, or what I wanted to say, maybe I can't really say that now without it seeming weird, so I guess we're just moving on. And it drops the conversation right there and kind of cuts it short instead of keeping it going in the sort of ping pong, table tennis sort of a way that conversation is supposed to be. You're supposed to be hitting back and forth. You're supposed to be giving somebody something and then they volley it back to you and you volley it back to them. It's okay to give anecdotes and your personal opinion or bring it back to yourself, but you have to conclude that and punctuate it with sending it back over there to them so that they have something to say. So that also made it kind of frustrating and boring to watch because all the conversations just were deflated and just cut short and just blah. It's like they started going down a path, took a couple steps, and then Meghan just stops and blocks the path like, yeah, and it's about me. And then they head back to talking about Meghan and the conversation's kind of over. Now, it's important to remember that there's nothing inherently wrong with that all by itself. These days, social media is like 90% just talking about yourself, what you cook, what you do, how you work out, like whatever it is, how you style or organize, whatever. A lot of social media is like that, just sharing parts of your life or your family or whatever. That is social media. And so it's become a lot more acceptable to, have that sort of self-centered presence as part of your experience in life and people's experience with you, where you're sharing stuff about yourself. But it quickly becomes boring and tiresome for people who don't actually know you and care about you. Like your friends and family should at least endlessly want to know more about what you're doing, no matter how mundane it is. And if you're an expert in any sort of a field, then you're delivering your knowledge to people, and that's a little bit different. But for most people, their social media feed is not for television. It doesn't make for a good show. And that's what this feels like. Meghan tried to make this her social media on steroids, and it's just boring. It comes across really dull. All of the conversation and the things that they're doing, none of it is innovative. There's no major accomplishments discussed or shown. There's no skills here. So what are we really supposed to latch onto? Watching two people reminisce about how they started working together a few decades ago is not good TV. It's boring. It just is. She makes a pasta dish with Daniel and she comments that, well, my kids aren't eating heaps of noodles, as if that would be a horrible thing. That felt a little targeted to her fellow Montecitans, the community there. She didn't want the other moms thinking that she feeds her kid pasta. But this was a missed opportunity here. She mentioned the kids, so why not mention what you do feed the kids, how you turn this into a dish that they like or a dish that they'll eat? What do you do to make pasta more healthy for them? I personally use protein pasta. It's made with chickpea powder as part of the flour content. It has a little bit more body to the flavor. These are the types of tips and tricks that would have given her show some degree of substance. It would have given people perhaps a new idea that they haven't seen already, like the one pot pasta. By the way, hers came out looking watery and overdone, not al dente in the slightest. Didn't look very good. She also made lumpy cake batter, and using Ziploc baggies as piping bags is great if you're really in a pinch and you have nothing better to use, but reusable would be more eco-friendly. Once again, the eco-warriors, Harry and Meghan, made a big song and dance about how much they care about the environment and people should take airplanes less often, only to turn around and take private jets everywhere themselves and waste excess plastic in the kitchen, apparently. When they were making the cake, they marinated a little bit too long, talking about how the cake is pretty on the inside. The naked cakes are just pretty on the inside, like people who you really got to get to know. They went on and on about this, and then they came back to get the cake to eat it, and they talked about it more, about how it's just pretty on the inside. They droned on and on about this for so much airtime that it was clear they really didn't have anything else to talk about. She also paired these raspberries rather than placing them in threes, which threes always look better. Perhaps it's supposed to be representative of what she has taken from Harold. I don't know. But pairing raspberries in threes is 100% of the time going to look better. Really, any garnish threes is going to look a lot better. The best part of this show, as I said, is the cinematography. The director, Michael Steed, has done better than anybody could. And that's clear. I don't think anybody else could really get much out of this. Upon conclusion of the first episode, what really stood out to me was it didn't make me feel like doing, trying, or having any of the stuff shown in the video. So whether it's hosting or cooking focused, anytime food and drink is involved in a show where that's the focus, it should ideally make you desire to have some for yourself. You should want to have a slice of that cake or a cup of that coffee or tea or a bowl of that pasta. It really should invoke that in yourself. You should walk away from the show or be sitting there watching the show thinking, oh my gosh, that looks delicious. I wish I could try that or have that. And I just didn't get that here. And that's something that Anthony Bourdain's show did have. You did leave it craving, wanting to try that or go to that area, travel there and see for yourself the beautiful area and try these restaurants for yourself and try the local, hot spots for yourself. But with this, I had absolutely no desire to try any of the stuff because it just didn't look that great despite having beautiful cinematography. He did everything he could to try to make it look good. It was the food itself that didn't look very tasty, unfortunately. Some things that could have improved it would have been pressing just a little bit further. If she would have gone just a few steps farther on most of these moments, it would have been vastly improved by the way of delivering some degree of value. They really gave us nothing in this. It was all quite amateur. And allegedly, it's supposed to be, but if that's the case, she should have made that more clear. They've come out now that there's been criticism to say, like, yeah, Meghan, what is an amateur? She isn't trying to be, a chef. And we purposefully left in here showing her, looking around the kitchen like she didn't know what was happening. Okay, but they didn't make that clear, and so it came across poorly. It came across like she was trying to impersonate somebody who knew what they were doing, which is a fail. It's either a fail in the way they packaged and delivered it, or just a general fail in the fact that they agreed to do this particular format of show. As I said, their conversation wasn't really interesting. It was more, look what we did. This doesn't have to be perfect, and this is what we did. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're doing it because it's fun, and we enjoy it, and that's why we're doing it, and look what we did. That was like all they talked about. And then they just punctuated it with, we did it with intention. Cool. You can do a lot of things, anything really, good or bad, with intention. That doesn't immediately make it fantastic. I will be back with more soon. Thank you for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a happy day ahead. I'll see you next time. Bye.